The London Overground has been in the news a bit as of late, mostly because of the recent renaming of its existing lines, which has been met with a somewhat mixed response, but also because of recent progress that has been made on what could likely be the system's next line. This planned line is currently known as the West London Orbital, although we'll see what name Transport for London actually picks when the line is completed. As its name suggests, this line will provide a sort of orbital rail service that will link up various suburbs in London's west, so that travellers will no longer need to go all the way into central London to make journeys between these suburbs by train. And like most of the London Overground, the line is going to be built almost entirely using existing rail infrastructure, which should make it relatively cheap and easy to do. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at how this new line could work, where exactly it will run, and just how long we might need to wait before we see it become a reality. Hi all, I'm City Moose, and I make videos about public transport and urbanism, so if you like that kind of thing, consider subscribing. If you want to support the channel, I also have a Ko-fi, it is always appreciated, but now let's get back to the Overground. Most of London's railway network is focused on providing a radial service between the city's various suburbs and the city itself. And while more orbital-style lines have existed for centuries, these have often taken a back seat when compared to their more radial counterparts. In more recent decades, however, TfL has started to put a bit more emphasis on these orbital routes, and one of the biggest steps they've taken to improving orbital rail travel in London was the launching of the London Overground in 2007. This launch saw various poorly performing privately operated railways in London get taken over by TfL, who would then go on to give them the new Overground branding, improve their service frequencies, and revamp their stations. Since then, they've continued to do this with other lines, and today the Overground network is made up of 6 lines, 4 of which operate orbital-style services. Those being the Mildmay line between Stratford, Clapham Junction and Richmond, the Windrush line between Dalston Junction, New Cross, Clapham Junction and West Croydon, the Suffragette line between Gospel Oak and Barking Riverside, and the teeny tiny Liberty line that runs between Romford and Upminster. As you can see, these lines basically create a loop around London, and by doing so they have made it a lot easier to make trips between London suburbs without having to go all the way into the city. And the proposed West London Orbital line is going to be continuing this in West London. The proposal would see the line start at Hounslow Station, which is on the existing Hounslow Loop line. From here, it would run alongside the National Rail trains using this line up to the other existing stations at Isleworth, Syon Lane and Brentford. Naturally, at all of these stations, passengers would be able to interchange with the existing South Western National Rail services using those lines. After Brentford, the line would proceed up to its first brand new station at Lionel Road, which would provide access to the nearby G-Tech Stadium. Past Lionel Road, the new line will join up and share track with the existing Mildmay Overground line at South Acton Station. Of course, at South Acton Station there would be an interchange with the Mildmay line, but it's also worth noting that at South Acton the plans potentially could see the line branch down towards Kew Bridge. Kew Bridge is an existing station that was originally built with 4 platforms, but currently only 2 of those platforms are in use, on the Hounslow Loop line. However, if the West London Orbital were to run to Kew Bridge, it could see those other platforms brought back into use to allow trains to terminate there as well as provide an interchange with said line. That said, going back to South Acton, from here the line would continue northwards towards the existing Acton Town Station, and then onto another potential new station at Old Oak Common Lane. For those of you who aren't familiar with the plans for Old Oak Common, it's intended to become one of London's most important interchange stations. It's going to be one of 2 London stops on the upcoming High Speed 2 railway, a topic which I've already covered in a separate video. I'll put a link on screen if you want to know more about it, as well as a stop on the Elizabeth line and National Rail services operated by GWR. There are also various stations nearby that will only be a short walk away, like North Acton Station on the Central line. As such, also making it a stop on the West London Orbital will open up a lot of transfer opportunities, which is important for orbital rail lines. On top of that, this new station will also be used by the Mildmay line, giving it access to this important interchange as well. But after this, the line heads onto the existing Dudding Hill freight line, which, as its name suggests, is currently only used for carrying freight trains. There are currently no stations on this section of the line, but as part of its construction, 2 new ones will be added at Harlesden, where passengers will be able to change for the Bakerloo and Lioness lines, as well as Neasden, where they could interchange with the Jubilee line. It is worth noting that Metropolitan line trains currently run through but don't stop at Neasden, so there is potential for an interchange with that line as well. But finally, the line will reach the existing Midland Main Line, where it could branch both north and south, with the north branch heading towards Brent Cross West and Hendon, providing an interchange with Thameslink at both stations, and the south branch heading to Cricklewood, which would also provide a Thameslink interchange, as well as West Hampstead, which would once again provide interchanges with Thameslink, the Mildmay Overground line, and the Jubilee line. This now brings us to the full extent of the planned line, and I'd say the line definitely does a solid job of connecting up various railways in London's west. That said, if the line were to be run one station further south, from Hounslow to Feltham, it could unlock a bunch of additional interchange opportunities with a number of South Western Railway services. But getting back to reality, it has been suggested that the line will run a 4 train per hour, or train every 15 minutes, service between Hendon and Kew Bridge, as well as a 4 train per hour service between West Hampstead and Hounslow, which would see the core section of the line getting a nice and frequent 8 trains per hour. As a result, this line should see some big improvements to the orbital transport options in London's western suburbs. Currently, if you wanted to travel between Hounslow and Hendon, it would take you close to an hour and a half by public transport, which would include taking a train into central London and back out again. That journey time is about 50% longer and much less direct than it would be by car. However, when this new line opens, public transport would easily become the quickest option, with travel times between Hounslow and Hendon being estimated at just 37 minutes. In a city like London, where transport options for travelling into and out of the central city are already very good, building more orbital transport options like this one can provide some of the biggest gains to the city's transport network. On top of that, this line should be fairly simple and cheap to build, given it's using almost entirely existing infrastructure. Of course, the plans do call for some new stations to be built, and parts of the infrastructure, like the Dudding Hill Freight Line, which is not currently even electrified, are going to need some significant upgrades. Most recent estimates have put the cost of building the line at around £430 to £610 million, although I'm sure that number will get higher, and with an expected completion date sometime in the early 2030s. That is, if TfL can actually secure the funding. That does, however, give us a lot of time to brainstorm a name for the line. The Londonists suggested calling it the Brent Line, given the line's close proximity to the Brent River as well as running through multiple Brent-named stations. Though that almost seems a bit too sensible to me, so if you have any thoughts on the name, leave them in a comment below. This does, however, bring me to the end of the video, so if you enjoyed it, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel, and if you really enjoyed it, consider supporting me on Ko-fi, it is always appreciated. But, as always, I'm Kyle, aka City Moose, and thanks for watching.